Alrighty. Hey, I'm Chris, and this is another Airwindows live stream as it is Tuesday, August 19th, apparently. And, I've been real busy lately. A lot of things have been going on. It's got me very tired. And so what I'm thinking on doing today, and I don't have my car here right now because I had to leave it off to get repaired. And I'm going to have to leave off. Ooh, cool, doing an 18-track mix with Console X. Nice, there you go. Cool. You know, I have some fun ideas for what I would like to do with future console versions. I've been working on a bunch of things. It's not simply a matter of pursuing TAPAC. TAPAC was a big deal, but also complicated because that came out, and then all of a sudden I'm scrambling around like crazy trying to make people not think that it's a hardware clone, because it's not. Fortunately, that's very simple. But it's real important that people not get that impression, because I want to buy those hardwares from the guy that makes them. And seems a really nice person. So, as much as I'm happy with what happened with TAPAC and stumbling across that, let's not get ahead of ourselves as far as thinking it's some sort of replacement for some other thing. No. That's not how it works at all. And I've got other stuff to work on today. So I was thinking I could do some of my reverb work and then maybe tinker with the arrangement cards program, because it's been a little while since I did any of that, and I'd kind of like to see more happening from it. And given that I have don't mind me running out of steam. Given that I've been putting a lot of work into things, as it happens, I think I've got my EQ sections for a couple of versions of console that I have in mind. I'm going to try to drink the coffee before it is too late in the afternoon. And I'm going to have to stop before my usual time because I have to walk out to the car repair place and pay them hopefully not a huge amount of money, see whether it's fixed the thing that's been going wrong, which the car is throwing a code periodically, and I don't like the sound of that. And I've been working on EQs for future versions of console, and I believe I'll be able to start putting those out, although this coming weekend I think I'm going to have a last gasp of doing amazing things and then take a couple of weeks to just lay low. But not before putting out a little plugin I'd like to call K Cathedral 5. K Cathedral 5 ought to be pretty impressive. It's the first one that you will see with the new arrangement for early reflections that also serves the purpose of a pre-delay. I don't know whether I'm going to want to add regular pre-delay to that as well, but for this one it's such a big haul that the early reflection section works also as a pre-delay if you wanted to. And I had some fun putting it together, and it ought to go over pretty good. After that, the EQs are really quite interesting, because the thing about them is I've revisited Smooth EQ. I've got a couple of new versions of Smooth EQ coming out, and one of them basically solves what I would describe as a problem with what I'm trying to do with new console versions. I would like to not have it be so just loaded with all of the controls in the world. In Console X, I managed to do a recording console channel strip type thing that has actually gotten more controls than an SSL, because the entire compression section sort of doubles it up, and it's applying independent dynamics processing to a pair of, like, literally Stonefire. And Stonefire is a weird thing. So in retrospect, as much as that is a strange, powerful, interesting processing that's kind of weird and futuristic, but also not very approachable and daunting and surreal. Well, turns out, by jumping into Smooth EQ again and adding another band and just basically like fooling with it, I moved it to based on a Butterworth kind of slope and set it up to have 4 controls, like it's essentially like a 4-band shelf with relatively steep crossovers. But the way that I'm building it is the same that I'm doing those guitar simulator plugins. And those are, you can get a lot of clean behavior out of them, even if they're weird EQ types. Here, we'll get back to this in a moment. I'm not really quite there right now. So the Smooth EQ is different from Smooth EQ 2 is different from Smooth EQ 1, and I've got it working, so I will be able to bring it. Because Smooth EQ 1 is essentially a 3-band Bessel style. It's a little steeper, but it's like a Bessel style filter. Well, Smooth EQ 2 adds another band, making it 4 bands, kind of like my Console X control surface, where I ran with what if control surface where you have 4 joysticks for controlling parametric bands. Well, Smooth EQ doesn't do parametric bands. It's doing relatively steep crossovers so that you can isolate the areas, but it's not like it'll do a peaking control, or at least it doesn't want to. It doesn't want to try to. And given that Console X has parametric like boosts and notches, like peaks and notches that are controlled with the joystick, well, that's interesting and it's fun, but what if you're not actually trying to do peaks and notches? Instead, you're trying to move like Smooth EQ would be doing, which is largely there. With that one, there's a couple of frequency controls between the bands, but they're essentially shelving. To the extent where if you boost or cut the extreme high up to Nyquist, the steepness of the crossover might cramp, but the frequencies will not, because it's just giving you a tighter grip on the overall bands that are being crossed over. So with 4 bands, you get to move the volume of bass, low mids, high mids, and treble independently with the joysticks. But what do you then do with the side-to-side motion that normally operates frequency? And I thought, well, I'm not doing sweepable peaks. This is not actually like sweepable peaks, but having cut it into 4 bands instead of 3, that's a little tighter than before. What if moving a control from side to side adjusted the 2 crossovers on either side of it? What would happen if you did that? So I started experimenting with that. And then the next question becomes, what do we do with the 4 controls down the middle at least in the control surface I made for myself. Maybe nobody will ever go and buy that, but it is actually available. Yaletex does sell it. I went and started designing yet another control surface for being tailored to the simplified stripped-down version of it, and got fairly far with it, although it won't be. Console H is still going to be the hip-hop oriented thing that in theory could ride on the same control surface that works for Console X. All of the controls will be assigned to something. I'm just looking towards what if I could not assign as many controls, easier to set up and less to do and think about. And I thought, you can adjust the frequencies of these crossovers with side-to-side motions of the joysticks, and that would kind of work. And then what do you do with the cutoffs? And I did some experimenting with using resonance controls, and in so doing, they would simply adjust the cue of those crossovers, which, and I was getting some help from somebody in chat who knew about exponential IIR filters and helped me establish them, and that combined with the Butterworth cutoff gave me a default resonance that was even steeper than Smooth EQ, which works nicely with the 4 bands. So, having done that, I just had to wonder what happens if the slope of the cutoff filter at one of those crossovers had to do with how far apart the center of the bands actually were. Console 0 is already out. I don't know if I have a Console O. I'll figure out. We've got Console H coming up, and a little more on that because now I have a filter that I can use for it. And I'm talking about one that would probably be more of a personalized version. It would work just as well with my control surface. I'm beginning to understand that maybe nobody is ever going to go and get those control surfaces, but if you had them, I think that Console O would have one of these versions. Haven't really decided it. Maybe it would be a good choice for this one I'm talking about now, because here's the thing. This version of the 4-band version of Smooth EQ would lend itself to a Console O for orchestral because the settings near the center are so good at being relatively uncolored. And the design of it, using the 4 joysticks for it, but having them not simply be peaks. Because with a lot of things, you don't just throw a peak on there. That's what you do if you're doing a Console X style, rock and roll style, SSL big console 80s style mix, is you start throwing crazy peaks and dips and doing aggressive moves like that. But doing this more shelving oriented thing, I hit upon something that worked real good. So it turns out, rather than run a separate set of controls for the steepness of the cutoffs, in which if you had like the low-mid band and you increased the steepness of that cutoff, it would find the crossovers to either side of the low-mid band and make those steeper. What happens if you take this particular design and you have the steepness of each crossover be a factor of how much space between the center points there are? Here's what happens. You can boost your shelf and it boosts up flat and then cuts back. Then if you start sweeping the frequency around, the crossovers will shift. But also if you're contracting the space between treble and high mid and expanding the space between low mid. And what ends up happening is you have a shelf that's moving, but as you push it higher, it tilts. It makes each of your little shelves its own tilt EQ, simply by virtue of how the crossovers are working. And if you're starting with Butterworth and then increasing it, that's automatically going to make the crossover slightly resonant. That's what happens, is move them apart and the space between them becomes more of a smooth vessel-like filter. And steepen them up by moving them closer to each other, it'll still be flat if set flat. But then the more you offset it, the more of a sharp distinction you get between there. You can get a really resonant-like cutoff if you've got the frequencies that you're using. 4 separate frequencies that can be controlled if you have your joysticks or whatever, or simply as part of the plugin. It just automatically does this tilt EQ thing for the shelf band that you're also manipulating the volume of, to the degree that it even matters. Because of course, if everything is flat, it doesn't register the any degree of shallowness or steepness or resonance. Set flat at any level, it's going to add up to pristine. And then you can just kind of color in, like if you have some kind of boost happening and you dial the frequency, you can really hear it sort of leaning and sweeping in a useful way. I've not run across a EQ that behaved more nicely as far as being able to dial in sounds by ear. And it really justifies the stuff I was doing with trying to get a control surface that had joysticks, because it's just neat. So I'm looking forward to that, and already like it better than what I have in Console X. So that whole thing kind of replaces the division between Stonefire and parametrics. And granted, Console H is going to have like shelving EQ crossfaded between parametrics that have bit crush built into them. And that's going to bring me to Smooth EQ 3. But Smooth EQ 2 just feels like it's going to be a lot of fun to fool with. And the neat thing about it is that it all comes out of the topology that I had for just making these EQs out of simple biquad situations, but then putting them back together again after each stage, like I'm doing with pointy guitar. And with using biquads, and particularly thanks to the addition of that exponential filter, because the neat thing about that is it is a very high efficiency, low CPU thing to add. And that brings me to what happened with Smooth EQ 3 would be about dropping back to 3 bands, because the control surface that I have, that I'm doing this one basically to cater to, so that all the little controls, that is, if somebody was ambitious and was like, I'm going to get the control surface that Chris did, because you can just go and buy those. They're not cheap, but you can go and buy them. And then, as promised, all of these other things that he does are going to start working with it. Well, in terms of Console H, I like the idea of having still like resonant filters on the joysticks, because that's just kind of neat. And that leaves me with the 3 controls that are part of Stonefire and a smaller one which I've labeled Range, which in Stonefire it's between the Stone and the Fire bands, the Kalman filter stuff. So if instead that was a crossfade between, and I can even have separate dynamics for each one too, like I could have dynamics for the shelving EQ, which is normal and sounds normal and is nice and fine. and then also a separate dynamics band for just only the resonant filters, because those are the really transformative ones. And you should be able to crossfade between them and have them each set up for whatever behavior you want, and then just hopefully find a happy medium in there. And that leaves me with a 3 bands of fixed frequency shelving EQ. And so that's where Smooth EQ3 comes in. And that's going to have its own usefulness and may also be useful to other people as they are developing software. And it may also be useful for people who want to work on stuff, but their computers aren't very powerful. Because here's the thing. Smooth EQ is using multiple layers of biquad filters, all set to add up to a Bessel frequency. So it's a very gentle roll-off, but there's still a lot going on in there. Thanks to last week's work with getting that exponential filter type right, which is, I had been told long ago that I needed to be using one of those anytime the tables I was looking up said that the filter had to be 0.5 Q. Hey, Grins. And so at some point in last week on stream, in fact, I got enough help that I needed in order to be able to do a IIR exponential filter that went along with whatever frequency I needed. I got a little assistance with the frequency calculations and stuff. In fact, it was several layers of assistance. And Jonathan, maybe not right away. Because here's the thing. If I incorporate that, it is more likely to be an attempt at a retro console for getting those, like, I don't know, old Beatlesy type sounds. You combine the right flavors of EQ with stuff in there to make sure that everything can have its density and power just built right into it. And then also, it would be kind of, I don't know, more saturated and dirty, I guess. I do have some things along those lines in mind, but that's not inherently part of what console systems would be using. But yeah, here's the thing. Smooth EQ3, same basic technology as the original one, and Smooth EQ2, which is the incredibly diverse 4-band, where it'll do tilt EQ things to individual bands as you sweep the frequencies around and stuff. I'm really excited about that. Smooth EQ3 would be limited to exactly 3 bands, because that's as many controls as they have left on the console Rainbow Dash. Hell yeah. That's how many controls I have in that spot for that purpose. Turns out, if you just pick a Butterworth roll-off, as in non-resonant but as steep as you can get, and then do exactly 1 biquad filter and 1 exponential IIR filter, that's barely more work than just doing a single biquad filter. But the frequencies that you want for that are the exponential filter is 0.5, and the Q of the biquad ends up being exactly 1. That means that as you're defining the frequencies and settings for the biquad filters, you get to leave out a couple of divides in the setup. And so Smooth EQ3 is a Butterworth cutoffs. It's a little steeper than just a single biquad Butterworth filter. So it's steep enough that it sounds nice and clean when you boost lows or highs or something like that. It's likely to be set frequencies, and I'm going to probably put some thought into thinking about what are good frequencies to use. And just as clean as you could want it, but also it will eat so much less CPU than so many things I've done. It's very simple along those lines, and yet it will be extremely pristine. So it'll be the reach for your 3-band EQ and alter it in whatever way you want, and it'll sound extremely clean, smooth, pristine, accurate, and you won't notice the CPU load hardly at all. And that implies that you could design other versions of it with, for instance, just straight up using it as 3-band, or if you wanted to have a bunch of bands, well, you could try doing that, and then it would be many bands, all with the same basic arrangement. And that could be runnable on older computers more easily than some of the fancier ones. So that feels exciting, because honestly, a lot of the time I want to be able to reach people who can't necessarily run all of that many things. That's one of the reasons that I have such retro platform outputs, and I'm doing like Snow Leopard Mac and Windows 7 original VSTs, and then also into consolidated and stuff, is because I want to be able to reach people who can't afford the modernist of computers. Raspberry Pi. I'm building stuff for Raspberry Pi. This new version of SmoothieQ, SmoothieQ 3, when it comes, is going to be really well suited to if somebody wanted to do work on a Raspberry Pi and we're having challenges with track counts and stuff and not able to keep things going. It's like, well, there's one that's not going to be too heavy for your computer to handle. And you could fit them in all over the place. You could do all kinds of things with that. So as long as I have not been called by the garage and made to go out and pick up my car again, at which point my stream will be over, I'm going to say it's time to jump into the thing I was going to do. Namely, let's measure some reverbs. This is hopefully going to... I generated these this morning. I've been doing so many of these things because I just want to make them right. And this is my process. Spent hours a day just going through these because it's all genetic algorithm based, mostly randomness. And the point is to keep going through them while designing everything. I've gotten it so that all of these basically perform fairly well. But it's getting it to do that and then running it overnight over and over and over again until I can get something where it just happens to come up with an amazing sounding reverb. And in order to seek that, in order to search for that, what I'm doing is figuring out how this stuff works and assigning color coding to it. Oh, and I have forgotten a part. So let's walk through this. I do believe I can assign that its color, but then let's continue. I need to do one of these. This is batch processing, and this is part of my process. Is we're putting a mid-range EQ in there and then normalizing it to true peak and saving it under a different name. So I need to drag these over to here. And then it's going to give me my much narrower band, and I measure that differently. The whole purpose being to try to find variations on these reverbs where it will sound deeper and with more sonority, a better tone, in which I've found it sounds more like deep realistic space when it's very peak happy relative to RMS. And so that's the kind of thing I'm measuring. And every day I go through and do another batch of these. See, here we've got 17.62 LUFS. And in order to compensate for how it adds up, I add the room size, which is somewhat abstracted, but that's a 79. So that actually turns out to be plus 0.07. And my end result is 17.69. Nice. Meaning that it is color-coded in yellow. Once I've walked my way through all of this stuff, and we're going to move this so that I can still find what I'm working on. I'll show you all the ones I've made in recent days, because every day I do more of these. I've been trying to tune the algorithm of Into the Matrix, the Godot program with which I do this. Oh, look at that, 18.24 plus 0.21. Okay, that counts as orange. That means it's going to be more distant sounding than some of the other ones. And it's actually a rather smallish room. I don't think that my seat counts are actually making much sense. It probably would be better used to refer to something else like 264 square feet or something. Maybe that's more like what it'll be like. Hey, Grins. Alrighty, well, thank you. I hope I have luck with the car. It can't be as bad as the 2 wheel bearings. That was a nightmare. We can but try. And yeah, I'll catch up on Thursday. Like I said, I'm gonna be laying low for a couple of weeks after that, but I see no reason why I can't show up on Thursday. 16.74 plus it's gonna be 0.26. 17 exactly. That translates to green. Bear with me, I'll get through all of this. Then I can show you how these things line up. I've been adjusting the Into the Matrix parameters until it reliably generates stuff that's basically pretty good. The thing, though, is if you're listening to hundreds of different reverb impulses generated by a genetic algorithm, your ear fatigues very quickly. So I have to do this measuring for the purpose of giving myself a head start. If I can direct my attention using these to kinds of measurements that I feel are going to be useful, then it can help me get a head start on looking up what kinds of sounds might suit some purpose of mine. And yeah, this upcoming week, I have a new cathedral. It might not sound exactly the same as Cathedral 4, but better. But I've designed it in such a way where I think it's going to be useful. There's a lot of things that you can do. For instance, one of my changes in these that you can't hear unless I put it over to piping it directly to the screen, so I can't hear it, is I'm forcing mono less vigorously than before. When I use force mono, it forces some early reflections to happen often enough that if you have a hard left or a hard right sound, it will cross over to the other speaker very, very, very quickly, making it sound like it's a stereo reverb, which of course it is. And then if I'm not forcing mono nearly as hard, it actually makes it sound wider because the sound on hard left or hard right sort of blooms over there briefly before filling up the entire space. Yeah, I feel like K Cathedral 5 gets to be even better. In fact, I may very well be able to simply show you, but we'll get into that in a moment. I'm still in the process of going 16.65 plus, it's going to be 0.54. 17.19, that gets color-coded as green. Again, I've been adjusting into the matrix until it basically gives me almost anything is more or less acceptable. And I'm just trying to push the limits of that. Like how good can I get them to happen? It's actually favoring smaller rooms more than larger rooms these days. It's struggling to get the really big spaces, although there is a threshold past which the room is so large that it starts getting easier to please again. 55. 16.04. See, as we get to larger and larger sizes, the scores get lower and lower, but they're all basically relative. So when I look up some of these things, like ones that get color-coded orange, if I want a large space, I can look for the largest size in any of those tiers, and it'll probably be what I'm looking for. Okay, 15.92 plus, it's going to be 7.6. 16.68, that's going to be color-coded blue. And see how that's going? Like some of these are higher up the scale, and then it drifts down to these ones which are not rating as highly, but you never know. There can be individual ones, and that happened yesterday as I ran across one like that, where there are these individual ones that are complete outliers, and those are the ones I'm looking for. You could run a genetic algorithm spitting out reverb algorithms, spitting out constants to use for these things. And as near as I can tell, you can design it so they mostly work out okay. And I've been putting in those constraints. But you're still kind of waiting for that magic one that really satisfies some constraint or other. And in this case, it is about trying to get it to produce an incredibly high peak versus RMS score, because those are the sounds that, to my ear, sound incredibly deep. And like the echoes are literally super, super far away, which is the idea of reverb most of the time. Or at least it can be. There's plenty of reverbs that you can get where it's just washes of hazy clouds, and that's cool in its own right, but I'd have to adjust my programs to lean in that direction harder if I was pursuing that, which I probably should. Nothing saying I can't pursue that too. 16.39 plus this one's 0.81. 17.2. That counts as green. That's the best sounding of the last two. So as far as not maybe quite as deep, this, and then deeper, more like that. And I'm still looking for the ones that are extremely high peak energy relative to RMS. And that's going to be a factor of how these echoes all combine. Again, it's a 6x6 matrix. There's a lot of echoes to combine. It's not even using any all-pass filtering. It's just pure output. Oh, hang on. I forgot to put in a decimal point. 17.24. This might be yet another example, come to think of it. Let's find out. 0.82, this one. Ah! See what I was saying? This one's 18.06. I'm liking the promise of that. Again, the Fletcher-Munson, this is measured under a separate scale, and it's more along the lines of how clear it sounds, and also stuff that scores really high on the filtered scale tends to have interesting, distinct sounds to it. Whereas the ones that have very low on the filtered scale and very high on this all end up kind of sounding the same. So as far as this orange level, my highest level is of course red, but small place that performs well on that metric. Big place that performs well on that metric. Actually, you know what? While I'm doing this This is what it really sounds like. I'm piping it through now. I can't hear it. So there you are, an example of one of the reverb algorithms that ended up performing pretty well by my metrics. Oh, interesting, we have a strange visitor. Yeah, this is a audio software development stream, so good luck, I guess. Plus 0.89 this one. Oh, another one. 18.05. So these will have somewhat similar characteristics, and I love the fact that they are larger spaces. Oh, this sounds nice. So my hope is I can get through this and then also have some stuff to do in Godot, fooling with the arrangement cards game. We shall see. It's always possible that I'll just get called by the garage and I'll have to stop and rush off and do that. So you get what you get with this stream. This is one of those slightly off the hook streams, clearly. Oh, look, we have a unusually bad performing one. Maybe I can show you the difference between those two. So 15.30 plus 0.92. No, it's fine. 16.22. Again, I've been working on Into the Matrix so that generally all of these register is fairly good. This one peaks over here. Huh. I think you're right. I think I had talked about trying to do a old EMI console. The interesting thing about that, and this is much on my mind because I've been spending the last couple of days scrambling around like crazy, making sure I'm not stepping on a guy's toes. It's the guy who is doing a tape emulation hardware. And I am doing my level best to make sure that I'm not stepping on him while doing my stuff. Has raised for me the concept of how to be sure you're not just trying to rip somebody else's IP. Like, for instance, if you say, I'm doing channel and this is the Neve setting, you're kind of implying that you're copying the thing and making it behave like a Neve. Well, that's actually a very well-established brand. If somebody is trying to launch a brand, it's very different. But if you're doing something like, this is the red console, well, people can't have those. That's out of history. It's kind of different. God, excuse me. 16.76 plus this one's going to be 99. Alrighty. Several of these are scoring rather highly. That's nice. This mid-range area is the one where stuff really struggles to come through. I have such a random distribution coming out of Into the Matrix these days. I made it pick these room sizes very randomly. It's like random 500 plus random 500 plus random square root of 500. Or square root of random 500, rather. And as a result, some of them are tiny, like the 15 cent the 57-seater there, and some of them are upwards of. This would have been generated out of the one that the intended seat size is more like 1,300. So let's see. Let's start over. 15.79 plus 1.08 technically. All right, 16.87. That's actually going to be blue there. And now my little reference card gets flipped over because I'm looking at the Fletcher Munson ones. I'll figure something out. Again, something like Neve, or to some extent, say SSL, that's been out there as kind of a meme for so long. It's extremely well established. It's like part of pop culture. If you were to be doing a red style or EMI red style sound, that means a number of things. It means, Beatles. It means the first two Pink Floyd albums. Although probably I think that Ummagumma is actually the TG12345. And a lot of this stuff, like there were never many TG12345s either. If you're going for, I want the Dark Side of the Moon console, well, you can't have it. You can't have that. Nobody's even really making it. And if they were, the audience that they'd be trying to reach is very specialized and not going to be satisfied with just plugins. So it's a very different scenario. It's like somebody I was talking to the other day said, it's like going, if you put out a free plugin based on something, or if Behringer put out a free thing based on that something for $99, is essentially the same question, just a different price tag. So you bear that in mind. Yeah, well, I mean, Jonathan, the thing about that is I have those albums, and as near as I can tell, Ummagumma is screaming TG12345. Parts of the sound are exactly like what you get off of Darkside. It's just that it's the older instrumentation of Pink Floyd. So the drums are set up kind of differently. The whole thing is being handled kind of differently. But the console aspect of it is just so, it's the same as Abbey Road, of course. Abbey Road is also TG12345, same as All Things Must Pass. And they all have the same basic tonal shape to them. So yeah, I'm willing to claim Ummagumma is clearly same console as Abbey Road and Darkside and All Things Must Pass. It seems very obvious to me because it's clearly not that Saucerful / Piper at the Gates of Dawn console. Yeah, which is another reason why you can't have an EMI Red. So it makes things very difficult if you're making plugins and being like, I want to make a thing and say that it's like thus and so. It's like you can pick something where, let's see, 17, oh, actually that's the wrong one. For these, I'm measuring average. And adding to it. 23.83. Oh, hey, that's also that's orange. That's a very high score for those. So what that means is the overall density of it is not, it's denser than it should be, but the clarity in the mid-range should be fairly decent. And I hear some of that in there. Like over to the guitar section. That sounds pretty convincingly room-like. Here I'll do a sweep. That's a very tight little room, but it sounds pretty good. I think we have a winner there. Let's see how this one behaves, because it's the next size up. 24.33. Oh, okay. No matter what, that's also going to register as red. So we have another winner right here. This one's going to be on the good side as far as performance is concerned. This one, probably not. This looks like it's a larger waveform. It's going to have a higher RMS measurement. Not wildly higher, but noticeably higher. Plus 0.21, 22.76. It made it into the purple region. But this is considerably worse than these as far as mid-range clarity. Once I get through all these, I get to do something else. Or possibly just take a bathroom break and then come back and do something else. As we go, usually each morning I'm able to go through these faster because I'm not keeping up a running chatter. But there's nothing wrong with either way. Either way is fine. 22.5. So this is in the lower regions of not very impressive. Gray is as low as you can get without actually discarding the reverb. If I get one that I'm discarding, I'll show you what it sounds like. That'll be the kind that I throw away. I throw them away if this part is below a certain performance, and I think maybe we've actually got there, right there. 21.31 plus 397 means plus 0.39. Hey, hey. So this one we simply discard. So a quick little reference. Let me set it to stream. There's one that sounds very good for a small room. And here's my first one that is no good whatsoever. It still sounds like a reverb, but I can do better. And that's kind of the idea, seeing what I can do with these. So first of all, I will eat those to the trash and then go on. Many of these might actually end up getting eaten to the trash. It is very possible. Like sometimes I don't even need to do anything. Like 546 and it's starting out at 21.29. I don't even need to do the math. I know it's not going to reach 22. 22 is my lowest threshold. I'll go into the trash later and remove these from my list so that I'm not copying over the code for them. Both the audio and the code for producing them will simply go away at that stage. So this might actually be making the threshold 21.46 plus 0.55. I bet it will, just barely. Yep, 22.01. 22 is my minimum threshold for these, but this one actually is performing very poorly in both of those regards. But it's fine. I'll keep it, and we'll see whether maybe it comes in handy later. This one's probably going to be fine. 21.81. 71 rather. Plus 0.76, yep. Not up to the next threshold, but it does at least manage the gray rating of shame of one of the least performant ones. The interesting thing, which I'm observing sometimes, that one's probably not going to make it. That one's absolutely not going to make it. No point even doing the math. I already can tell. I'm finding that sometimes these ones which have an extremely high RMS measurement also fail real hard on the filtered one. as if you can optimize for certain things, but it precludes other things. And I'm still figuring out what I think about that. Like, I'm not really quite sure what that means. I think this might be one of those examples, but maybe it'll just barely make it. Plus 82 is what that one's going to be. 21.98 is close enough to 22 that I'm willing to keep it. After all, this is one of those ones where the RMS measurement is unusually good. But this is kind of sometimes what I find. I'm really not finding that there's ever a time that it does a super high RMS measurement and also a super high filtered Fletcher-Munson measurement. And that's kind of useful because it's like there's separate ways of the thing being able to be good. Another 22.02. So you see some of these, they end up getting the Fletcher-Munson rating at a red or a purple or whatever, but these have just been gray from there on. That one, the RMS measurement is unusually low, although I don't think this is actually going to do much better. But those, I feel, are sometimes the ones where it can give me a really high reading for another part. It's like it doesn't seem to be able to excel at both at once. So let's see, 92. 22.4, it does count, but it's another one of those grays. They'll be sorted in different ways once I get that up and running. Once I copy them over to the correct place. Reaper Mania, yeah. Kenny Joya is neat. I was in a forum with him back in the day when everybody was running around doing things like collaborations. Some of the folks like Mixerman and Slipperman and whoever teased the heck out of him because he liked quantizing things. He had a bit of a last laugh as all the industry started doing likewise. Now we're drifting away from that again, I think. Or at least I think there's a good chance of it. If I have anything to do with it, they will. I still mean to demonstrate what soft clock can do for you. I think it is extremely potentially valuable. This one might not actually succeed. We'll see. I think it's potentially really valuable to have a metronome that works on entrainment rather than a narrow little tick. If your metronome works on entrainment, then you can find grooves within that. Oh yeah, this is apparently a dead loss. It is unusually poor compared to some of these other ones. So what's that sound like as we are about to throw it away? Yeah, so when I have one that I don't think is any good, it's typically going to act kind of like this. See, there's that sort of cloudy quality going on. There's a murkiness to that, which I don't want unless I'm doing it on purpose, in which case that would be more extreme. Also, there's a bit of, I think, left to right washiness, which is partly what I explained before, that the side to side stuff, I can have early delays hit more aggressively, meaning it'll cross over from one channel to the next more eagerly. And it's all, we'll see what we can make out of this. Hi, that one's another one that's probably not going to make it. $21.79, sure enough. This one, nothing special. I can show you ones of this size that are, but this doesn't actually meet that grade. So now what do we do? Firstly, let's move these to the trash. I'm going to finish this entire section of working on this stuff And then I'm going to take a brief break and set you up with some music of some kind. So here, select verbs, and I've got things set into this double winners category, and that's what I'm adding stuff to. So I open up that, and I open up this, and I open up trash, because what I'm doing is in this list here of the ones that I generated over last night, I'm going to delete the ones that are in the trash. 397. Also 546, that's right there, in fact. Not 553 or 767, but there's 818, that one's not being used. And then these two on the end didn't make it. So everything left is ones that I'm going to keep. And I cut them away and save and close that. And put them in at the bottom here. This is now a 70,000 word document. It's 375,000 characters. Or 4,995 lines. If each of these things count as a line, it's hundreds upon hundreds of possible reverbs, which I select through differently because these are too many to listen to all of them and make any sense of it. And so that's not something that can happen. And so now I can empty trash. And we don't need my SD card here anymore. And you'll see that this is actually sorted already. But then if we take these and add them, they will fall in at the, looks like I have one that I'm going to, let's stop that. So what I do when this happens, because I don't know which one of them is actually going to be better, is I have to go and find the one that I just did. Actually, you know what? I do still have to go and find the one that I just did. But this one here is actually one of the worst. So let's see whether the other one is better. I should sort by name for that. And it's one of the ones I generated just recently. And in fact, it is. So what I'm going to be doing is looking up the 925 here. That's the more recent one. That goes away. We're going to discard it. And then rather than use this one, we're going to eat it because this one measured better. And none of them were actually all that amazing. And since that changed my selection, what that means is that now I can't actually have the, oh, no, I can. Check this out. We'll do it like this. Here's all the ones that were selected today. Sorted by tags, you can see that my high score from today's batch, yesterday got me a whole bunch of cool ones, but the high score from today's batch is this 213, but then there's several of these, which are among the largest ones I'm going to set it back to where I can hear it. So where I had one of those yesterday, there's one similar option. There's another one. And both of those are pretty respectable for that size of room. And then I have one of these giant ones. There. And then we've got a much older one. Well, not much older. A few days older. That's tiny. And then the one that I got today. They're all very teeny. And then here's some of the ones that I generated earlier. And here is the, let's see, if I hit space, it'll maybe select the, so, but I'll be listening for like tone qualities out of those. Oh, and look, we have a huge one again. So yeah, there are now 177 possible reverbs to pick from in here. Oh, so looky here. Here's one that is unusually good at mid-range, right next to ones that do not have good mid-range. So let's audition them just briefly. Not especially good. Not especially good. Size is increasing, is becoming closer to the size of the one that did measure good. But then this next one is a little larger than this, but would have better mid-range. And I think that's correct. It sounds more open. Like there's the guitar, and it's not making unpleasant noises exactly in the mid-range. So yeah, I do this every day. That didn't give me that much, but you know, some days several of them work out okay, some days not so much. It all depends. So at this stage, I'm going to go and do my little pit stop, but I will set you up with, actually, let's make a special effect stack for this. Let's add the extra special plugin. If I have it here, which I wonder whether I do. Huh. Okay, well, never mind then. Worry about that later. Here's meter. Actually, the fellow that is doing that good work that led me to Tapehack, which is a separate, entirely other thing, but I'm still quite happy that it led me in that direction. Hopefully can get some use out of meter, because meter will be giving the kind of information that will tend to highlight where his hardware is going to be better than other people's. So I'm hoping that'll be some use to him. We'll see. Anywho. Be right back. So seeing as I can't actually listen to this because it's being played to the stream only, I'm going to shut it down. And hey, we're back. So I was thinking I would like to fool with, let's see, I'd like to empty trash first of all. I'd like to fool with this one. It's been a little while. It's been a little while since I got into this, and I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get anything done on this, but seems like a fine day for just seeing whether anything can be made to happen with it. And let me set up my screen so I can see where it's being oriented. There we go. Seems good. I am not at all sure whether I'm going to keep using JetBrains Writer. It depends a little bit on whether it gets taken over by stuff that attempts to write all of the code for me. And I don't approve of that. Here's the one. Because it'll continually be trying to do stuff as if it is some kind of web coder and knows all of the things it's doing, and that tends not to be true. At any rate, we can do this. Oh wait, I'm still going through. Let me put this back to me being able to hear it, shall we? So we can do this. What's happening here is I can put melodies on this screen for the purposes of it guiding me so that I can know what notes work. And I can also use these things to determine what key I'm in. Like here is a primary key. I can also update secondary key, which will bring other notes in and make them be available. And then without doing a secondary key, this shows me where the root node is. And see, now this one's for Drake. And then if I throw in a secondary key, it's going to start lighting up some of the black keys here, because those are the ones that become available if you're one key to the side or two keys to the side, and so on, all the way to if you are so far around the circle of fifths that literally every note is available now. And what that means is the primary key has these chords and these major minor variations in there. The 7 is just something I threw in because that's the Mixolydian. And then the additional notes being introduced bring in these chords available. So among the things that might be, I was thinking about having it bring up chords only when the notes have been selected. So I'm not sure if that's going to be feasible, but this is a fine day to just look at some of these things and go, where could this go? What could happen to this next? Among other things, it could be considerably larger, so I have room for the card game aspect of it. I'm not going to be entering all the data in for that, but I have a large quantity of data to be added in for that. And yeah, it's a matter of finding out how to make this work, which I've now got it set up so that it draws a keyboard and it's got this stuff, but they can be positioned anywhere. Like going to the Godot application is where I would be moving these various things. And yeah, the thing I was thinking was, what if I have those notes selected, it would show the C chord, because that would be a C. But then maybe if I was picking other melodies, maybe it would show what chord that was. Or it would be revealing every chord where there was a note in there that was represented. The idea being, like, what if you could just go, okay, I want to be in the key of, like, E, or indeed, let's say we're in the key of A Lydian. So the root note is already marked there. It shows you what the base of the key is. But then if I do this, if I have those notes selected, what chords might appear that have those notes in them? And if I included a secondary key, what chords would appear that would have those notes in them? Would it be possible to only flag the chords where they contain one of those notes? And perhaps not even include the root note. Like if I'm in A Lydian, so it's the high note of a major chord in a Lydian. And then you're doing D sharp there. Well, what? Because I don't know off the top of my head, and it feels like that might be useful to go, I'm going to make up a melody, and I'm going to just click it in using these notes. Oh, it could very well be. Yeah, very likely, yes, that would be something to be fixed. Have I actually included that, or have I just left it off? No, I have included it by mistake. So let's see. Don't mind me cleaning some of these things up. Yeah, so last chord of C major scale, you're entirely correct. That would be sitting in the Locrian mode, and it would be diminished. And I wonder whether I can update that. Let's see what my code looks like. It may or may not be relatively easy to sort out. I don't know. We'll find out. You're entirely correct. B minor has an F sharp that is not present in the scale of C major, so it's saying that there was a minor chord there would be a fib, and it would need to be a B diminished. And I've not actually incorporated any of that stuff, so that's fine. We can also fool around and see whether that can be done. It looks to me, maybe I should go and dig up one of my charts. It looks to me like I could simply type that in each key, 0 major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixed Lydian, Minor, and Locrian. I don't think you get to select Locrian out of one of the possibilities. But it looks more than a little bit like I could do this. Oh. See, MDI. There. Now, if that holds, and I think it probably will, then that should be, yeah, I think so. I could also leave that chord out, frankly, but I see no real issue with just up and saying that it's diminished. And looky there, it does look as if I pick a relative mode or whatever that it is, because it's going to stay diminished regardless of what mode it's in. But it does seem to be doing a pretty decent job of spelling out that you can play that chord, but only if you leave out the fifth. Now, what I don't think I can do conveniently is leave that out entirely and not suggest it. But diminished, that's probably fine. What happens when I get into the, oh, hi. So that can't be right. Something else is happening there. That's probably why I had it be minor. If I set it to recede, meaning that the additional key elements are counterclockwise around the circle of fifths, we get flats and we get stuff that does not appear to be problematic. Yep, recede seems to always work fine. But it looks to me as if I go into advanced, it's always calling for a diminished chord, and that's not necessarily correct. That's probably why I had it that way. So let's see whether we can, if it's so consistently doing this, I bet I can, first of all, I bet I know why it's doing that. I think that's just part of what you get out of that. But I bet I can override that. It's making me wonder a little bit. I should go and dig up my chart. Give me a moment. Or indeed one of the mouse pads that I made. The mouse pads that I made had special language in there saying that if you're adding stuff as a secondary key, it's going to be out of this column. And I guess as you're going clockwise, the note that you're adding is always let's investigate that again. So we're in C, and so if you go one step clockwise to G, then you're adding an F sharp. And considering that's the only note that's being added, is it a minor? Damned if it ain't maybe a diminished chord. Didn't expect that. Interesting. Okay, I didn't necessarily anticipate that all of these chords being added have to be diminished chords. Let's see whether we can make better sense of this. Because this part's essentially working. Also, let me take a moment and I'm just checking to see if I have a message from the garage, seeing as I have to run off and pick up my car if they want me to. So, what up here? Is it always going to be a diminished chord? Because I tell you, what we're getting here, this F sharp, the advanced chord is in fact diminished. That's a diminished. This would be the next note. So that's correct as far as it goes. Then as we go to another secondary key, go another step over, and that one becomes available as minor. But then the new one, let's see. There's our F sharp. Here's our C sharp. Okay, didn't see that coming. That one's diminished and could be either major or minor. Weird, interesting, bizarre. Not sure what to do about this. There is a diminished minor and a major diminished. Okay, this is getting messy. I'm pretty sure it's going to hold no matter what I do with it, too. Like, we'll go to E. Should put a button for blank all of these. That seems doable. Because one of the goals of this is to get it so that I can sort of noodle around and it will present me with things that make music theory sense and sound nice. So here we are in E major. And then if we add a secondary key, we get B. And we get B major. Oh, no, wait, secondary keys, that's actually, I'm confusing myself needlessly. The new note's the A sharp. So, so that's the new note in this case. And that is definitely diminished. And then if we go one more, then there's our A sharp, and I believe that means it will become available as a simple minor. That's not it. Bingo. Bingo. So if we advance 2 steps, it unlocks the minor of the previous one. And then the additional one, let's see, E, F. That would be the new color coded, so I can find it that way. So that's interesting. So for doing advanced, that means that the ones that get unlocked as additional chords could in fact be either major or minor. But you have to advance 2 steps over in order to have the next one over not be diminished. And that does seem to be following through. It's doing the same thing. So it's going to do the same thing in any key. Whatever key I choose, it'll behave the same. So we can go back to major again. Just zooping through and blanking some of these notes. Trying to find what notes do what. Next thing is to find out whether if I continue to go, does it do other weird things? Because I've absolutely learned something out of this and it's going to be relevant. The first thing that I've learned is going to a 1 step over. Oh, no, that's just mode. 1 step over, it is in fact diminished, that it's being added. But then I go another step over, and that F sharp should change to minor, if I can make it change. And then if I go a third, what then do we get? Well, we already know that the F sharp got a simple minor unlocked. So C, D, E, F, F sharp. Sure enough. Then the C sharp. Okay. getting somewhere. That suggests that as we go, I could include 2 instances. Every time there's another set, we're adding both the major and the minor as available chords, and only the one on the end. As we keep going, it's like the one all the way in the end is the one that has to be diminished, because it's always introduced something that's just a little bit too far off. Now what I should probably do is find out what happens with these counterclockwise ones. But this is already something to look into here. So how are we actually generating that? It's been a little while. It's been a while since I've fooled with this. I may not actually end up being able to do this today, but I can at least try. We'll see what ends up happening. See, we're iterating over here. And we're doing this. So I've got offset clamped there. I could simply make another bank of, I could make another bank. And then, let's see, O equals 1, O less than or equal to key offset plus plus O. I could throw in a if statement where it'll go through here, but chords display is either has chords added to it, or perhaps we'll have another bank, and the other bank can contain the, and I don't know yet whether or not we're going to end up having to do separate for advance or recede, but I can simply check to see whether we're on the end one, which has to be a diminished chord. And if we're not on the end one, these extra ones that are added are just other strings. So if it's hitting an A and it's not A diminished, and I know from this experimenting that it's always going to give me a possible major or a possible minor, then I can simply have that be part of the string. Like the string can say A minor if it's A, and that gets thrown in. It'll mean that it'll start looking more cluttered, but what that also means is if you were in a key and you're noodling around on a guitar or whatever, and you go, oh, I threw in an A minor. How far do I have to depart from this key in order for that to be an available chord? Or if you're already departing from the key, it'll just show you a couple of different things that you can try. Advance is simply rotating around the circle of fifths to produce additional entries in the same slot. Like the way I worked out this stuff is I worked out that as you introduce additional stuff, as you rotate around the circle of fifths, it makes other chords become available. And the new chords that are introduced as each new note gets introduced are typically, if you add, they're coming out of one column, going in one direction. And if you are receding, then it's going counterclockwise in the circle of fifths, and it's coming out of another column. It's always, the new note that you're adding is always coming out of that other column. And so that's what I'm drawing these chord names from. So let's start by Oh, it looks like that did that. It's doing some of its stuff for me. It added the closing bracket all by itself. Whatever, it's fine. So what I'm going to be doing for both of these is copying this, but rather than being chords, there's going to be another array, and the other array is going to be set up to, I wouldn't even necessarily need to draw it only from this. I can simply replace, this is from the regular array, but I could have a dedicated array just for the ones that get added. My comment says it's kind of messy. Yeah, guilty. Yeah, it's messy. Whatever. So what that's going to look like is within that loop, it'll go is O key negative key offset. And if O is negative key offset, in that circumstance, key offset would have been a negative number, but we're counting positively to get to it. Then we give what we've got there. And if not, it'll draw from a different array, perhaps even a array that is simpler than this. Maybe. Still, I'm figuring it out in my head as we go. And it'll use basically that exact same math, but it'll be swapping out for the new letters I need to include, which can include a space, which can include both major and minor forms. So let's take a moment and investigate what happens if we are receding rather than advancing. Because here we have our major stuff, but then if our secondary key drops back, B flat. Well, we've just highlighted that. It claims it is major. Is that true? Yes. Yes. Recede does give you a major chord. That is correct right out the box. Now what if I recede again? Now we've got this one. That one's going to continue to hold. Every time you step farther out, it is adding another note, but it's not going to be taking any of those notes away because they're still contained within the root key. We're only adding notes as possibilities. So that's B flat. I assume, hang on. No. That would be the, hang on. So C, secondary key of F means that this is the new one. That would be a B flat, to be sure. C, B flat, yep. And then if we go one further, what happens? E flat. Yep, that's also a major. But at what point does it start unlocking minors? That's not an available minor. But what about our B flat now? Oh, no, it's not available. It's still forcing a major. It's still forcing a major. Okay, let's keep going. Eventually it's going to give me a minor, at which point I would like to represent that, but it's a whole other algorithm this time. A flat. Interesting. So if we recede past a certain point, now that can be a minor as well as a major. I almost want a note card to note these things down on. It's probably a fine idea. Let me go and fetch myself a note card. Okay, I'm back. Stonefire is somewhat unusual for EQ. If you want something that's relatively normal, something that you might try is Smooth EQ. That's a more normal, well-behaved plugin. I'm thinking in terms of band-style EQs that are approachable. As far as compression, I think that my most recent compressor was working out pretty well. I feel like I have a recent one that did pretty good. I'm going to have a peek and see what my sequences are like. Yeah, that most recent one is in fact pressure 6. So you could play with pressure 6 compression-wise. And saturation, I got a million of them. K-Pack is the most recent. It actually is quite good. So let's see now. So advance. The first one that you produced is always diminished. Or the last one in the line is always diminished. Recede, well, it's going to work in a slightly different way. And the third one you produce gets to be minor. What happens when we keep going? A flat D gets added. D flat, so there's our C. And it's just a half step up, so we're really wandering away. And I think just about everything is available. And then let's see, A flat. Yep. So fourth one also gets to be, and like logically, once you're in all sharps and all flats, anything gets to be anything. There's no restrictions anymore. By all means, play with PyWacket. PyWacket has some interesting qualities. PyWacket is the compressor that I did that was kind of like Pop. Remember, Pop is a usable thing. Except that rather than go to a strictly turned down setting, it goes to a heavily negative density setting. It goes to one of my 1 minus cosine type settings where loud peaks can still poke through, but the body of the sound has been drastically stripped away. So technically, if you do PyWacket, it can be unable to compress all of the loudest peaks because they're allowed to poke through anyhow. And I believe what that does is it forces it to represent the peaks more accurately because they can't actually be part of attenuation. So Powhacket is the one where the front end of the transient impact is represented more accurately, and then it pulls back behind that. And it could probably do with revisiting that at some point. I think there's potential there. So let's see, now we're in 5th. You know what? Since every single key is now lit up, I know that, oh, well, interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. Well, that's just weird. Let's pretend we didn't see that. Let's assume that we can't act, if we are messing around with the secondary key that hard, then you can do anything and nothing matters. So how about, rather than having it draw like this, also note that it has not stopped me from being able to click on all of the notes anyhow. Let's just assume that's our limit. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th added when we do this. And then first, second, fourth major. And now let's revisit, well, quitting out of there is the easiest way to erase all those notes. Also, bear in mind, I believe I have a plugin that's called Dynamics, that is the Dynamics section from Console X. So that is a compressor and also a gate. Oh yeah, what Buttercomp is? It is a plugin where every other sample gets its own compressor, and the positive and negative sides of the waveform get their own compressor. So it's like 4 compressors in one, all running on the same waveform. And what that does is it will tend to force it to be more symmetrical, which can mean producing certain transient spikes might end up producing more second harmonic. So Buttercomp is also partly a even harmonic generator because it can get knocked off a kilter that way. But it's largely a fairly strange beast, that. So let's see. Advance. If we advance, it's going to automatically show it diminished, and one on the end is diminished, which is what we're already showing, so that part's fine. And then as we keep going, it'll start making this one be minor available. Let's see. So that doesn't have to be diminished anymore. That's not major available though. But then if we add a third, yep, we're still minor only, but now the C sharp can be a minor, and only the G sharp is forced to be diminished. But let's also take a moment to see whether F sharp there. See, there it is. Yeah, you can't have a major off of that. Does it ever get to where I can use a major there? 4? Signs point to no. 5, you get to have an F sharp major. Curiouser and curiouser. Just drawing down little notes about what this crazy thing is doing. It should be about the same even on different keys where we have a combination of black and white keys. Again, once you get to 5, all of the notes are now available, so anything can be anything. It's weirding me out a little bit though. Like, this can't be forcing everything to be only minor. Let's restart this experiment. Our original note. Or there's our diminished. We add one more. And that makes it be a straight minor chord, but no capacity to be a major chord now. Add one more. Now what are we looking at? Well, here's their C. If I remember correctly, everything is still forced to be minor at this stage. But the C sharp, I know the G sharp is forced to be diminished. Although maybe it's a, I'm not actually worried about whether the diminished can be major or minor. It's an odd enough chord that I'm not that worried about it. C sharp. Hi. So, if we advance, second to last gets to be major or minor. So now these are restricted. It's going to look like F sharp minor, C sharp minor, G sharp diminished. And those are what become available at this key. So then if we go to 4, C, I'm still in C major. Yeah, that seems about right. So D sharp diminished. Nope, that's definitely diminished. C. Well, hang on. What's going on here? So C sharp, there should be, that's the second one along. So F sharp is forced to be diminished and C sharp. Yep. So the second one is major or minor. How about this G sharp? C, D, D, E, F, G. Yep. Yep. So receding, the first and the second one in the line have to be forced major. Advancing, the last one that you get has to be diminished. The first one has to be minor, and then any ones in between could be major or minor. Oh, is there a lag? I do wonder what... Here, let me bounce the stream. Come on. Okay, so I shut it off and I started it up again. In theory, it'll hiccup and then be able to continue without breaking the stream or stopping it. Hopefully that'll work. So now we figured out some of these rules, probably, and I'm pretty sure they will apply for whatever key. So dang it. There you are. Except for, where are you? It's not showing me chat. That's annoying. Oh, that makes me sad. I lost chat. Where'd you go? Oh, all the sadness. See? See? No chat. No chat. There's 10 of you and I can't see any of you. Maybe if I do this? Maybe if I bounce the stream again. Chad, I miss you. I know you're there somewhere. I know you were there somewhere. But YouTube will not show me. I remember you, chat. Okay, I opened a new thing, which is not useful. Although it will be useful if it's actually containing chat. No, it's just some other dumb thing. How do I go about making this work? Dude, chat, where have you gone? I miss you. I miss you, chat. Your window is closed by mistake and cannot return. Bummer. Well, I'm going to keep talking to you even if I never see you again. I don't know what happened. So, chat, my beloved mysterious chat that I can no longer see no matter what I do, here's the deal, is in order to make this work, I think I need to make some more arrays. I did this last time. The quit that I did was supposed to make this window that you see here close. It did not do that thing. It did not even slightly do that thing. Instead, it quit freaking Chromium. That's what I wanted to do. Let's fire up Chromium again. Maybe it'll even be so nice that it lets me see chat again. That would be pleasing. Like what it's doing with tabs is not actually... Yeah. Guys, I'm locked out of ever being able to see chat again. That's woefully sad. Well, we can but try. I'm doing my best. Sometimes you just don't get to see your chat. So what's left here is me making this work somehow. So the way this is going to be done is by if statements, and they're going to be a little bit different each time. If my chord advances, then the last one in the row, so there's a, is going to be diminished. If it recedes, then the first and second that I hit are always going to be major, but then they can be major or minor. Ooh, actually, you know what? So this is all I get, apparently. Oh, look, a webcam setting. And because chat was in a window that got quit, I can now apparently never get it back. I weep for you, the people who are saying things that I don't see. But, maybe I can fire up another tab and see chat by watching my own damn video. We could even get into a feedback loop scenario. Maybe I can fire up another
There we go.
tab.
Haha.
By watching my own damn video. So now we can get into our feedback loop, except for I can mute that so it's fine. Oh, if I click this, do you go away forever again? No. Ah, look at that, we got there. Funny thing, I usually don't use dark mode. You look like this now. Unstoppable. So at the cost of having it be a little bit more messy and weird, we got there. And I even still have the streaming control panel window open. In fact, I can have only the streaming control panel window open, and the only difference is now you're in light mode. Before, you were in dark mode like the YouTube control panel insists that we be. But hey, you're back. I honestly am pleased with that. That makes me happy. So we need to make some more of these. I am puzzled as to whether I can... Yeah, see, the way I'm referring to it is I am calling stuff, but I'm always calling entry 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can just do an array without the subarray and just call it directly, and it should still give me the correct value. This is the wild music. It's meant to be kind of like a game, but it's a bunch of music theory combined together into a program, and that's what we're doing now. And it's making all manner of suggestions that are unhelpful because it doesn't really know anything. Such as the ides of this kind of nonsense. We'll call it majors, why not? I am a little concerned as to why are you now giving me an underline there, but maybe not so concerned that I can't deal with it. God, excuse me. So we can do this. Now we have to spell out each of those things in turn. And I believe I also need to spell out whether they're advancing or receding. Only advancing produces diminished, but then we're not actually calling these other ones in diminished. What we're calling is the original. So if advancing and receding both need to have their own strings, then I need to type out what's in there. I think so receding third, fourth, and fifth gets to be minor, but I'm not sure they're forced to be minor. If I remember correctly, when I went into that, maybe we don't even need major minors. Maybe I just hard code that in. I am puzzled. Because you see, the way this is going to work is it's going to give me the correct note, the correct letter. And I have every one of those notes available, and the ones that are diminished are in that spot. If I make another series of arrays with only one entry this time, and it contains like B minor where B diminished is written, and then it just only has B minor in that place, then I can swap it in. And looking it up from there means I would also be able to put major if that was a thing that could happen. What it says here is with advanced, I think what ends up happening is that with advanced, the first is maybe it's time to play with that again. We can find out whether it runs with the new strings there that are not being used for anything, and signs point to yes. So advanced is secondary key goes clockwise. So if we have only one, it's always diminished. We cannot make a major or minor out of this. If we have two, F sharp, C, C sharp becomes the one where you're forced to be diminished, so the last one in the list is diminished always. And then the other one that I've added, that's the F sharp. So that one gets to be a regular chord, but second one along is forced to be minor. So then if we have three of them, I think that's where we start getting into you can have major chords in there too. And let's just confirm. There's the new note. It is G. It's the one where you're compelled to be diminished. That means C sharp can be major and or minor. And let's see if we have F sharp, C, D, E, F, F sharp. Ah. So if you have three chords in advance, the last one has to be diminished, the first one has to be minor, a middle one can be major or minor. Oh, fair enough, fair enough. And some of the high CPU problem is probably going to be you being on an Intel CPU. I have had Intel, in fact I do have a Intel, my Snow Leopard computer is a Intel CPU. I don't know whether it's an i7 or what, but your computer more closely resembles the one that I do initial development on. And that one does strain when I try to run Pointed Deluxe on it, so yeah. So let's go one further step. So C, D, D sharp is our new one. Sure enough, one on the end can't be anything but diminished. Well, it is a diminished. One in the beginning, are you forced to be C, D, E, F? Are you forced to be minor? Let's find out. Yep. And then how about either of the ones in the middle? Is fine, and G, C, D, E, F, G. So then G sharp. Yep. Okay, so the first one, always minor. I'll draw a little diagram. If there's one, it's always diminished. If there's more, the first one's always minor, and then anything in between get to be either major or minor. And if I do that, I have an advanced pattern that works. The recede pattern, they are always major until I've added more than two, at which point the third, fourth, or fifth get to be minor. And that looks to be the pattern I'm looking at. And again, as we get weirder and weirder, it stops restricting anything. Like, boop. Do that, now anything could be anything. All of the notes are available. So let's make sure I have this selected this time. I don't want to quit Chromium again. After all of that anguish, quitting chat and being bereft of chat, man. So it looks like advancing we can have advancing minors, we can have advancing major minors. We're never going to have advancing only majors and no minors because that isn't a thing that can happen when we're going clockwise around the circle of fifths. I'm never going to remember all this, that's why I'm writing a program to do it. If we're receding, we start out with only being able to do majors. Why did you not give me a capital M? Thank you. So we have sets of new possibilities. They are all going to be the same chord. I should go and look up what section that's going to be. I think it's 3. I feel like I remember for receding, you take from the Lydian column. That means that for every step around, it'll be whatever number this is associated with this, except for that rather than on the second number, we throw in a number that is, which means we don't need to override this. We don't need that string. It's going to be the same as the string and chords. So alrighty then. Saves me a little bit of extra trouble. And now we go and override this stuff. So it's going to act a little bit like that, except for that I'm going to continue. Grants? I must have been getting confused. I thought you were, when I was talking about how I was on a Snow Leopard machine, for some reason I had the impression that you were on Mac. So no, if you're on a PC, then by all means run Intel. I don't know whether, I don't know what they have that is newer than the one that you said that you had. What was it, i7? i7. I don't know what PC has that's beyond i7. I just feel like there presumably has got to be newer stuff. It's just I wouldn't be the one to ask for that. So it's all cool. 0 to 11 I must do. I'm tempted to find out whether it's smart enough to figure this stuff out for me, but I bet you it's not. So I'm not going to trust it. It would just waste time. I can do this faster without trying to con the vestigial brain of this application into doing what I want. There we are. And now I just have to update these things, and that part will be done. So that's fairly straightforward. D sharp. Can you not? I didn't ask for that. Is there something I can do that makes it not do that? Oh, that's all screwed up. What is it thinking? Well, do I have this section selected, though? No, it's just doing something insane. F minor, A sharp, F, C. G, D, A, and E. There we are. Now I can swap over to that. Reaper is incredibly faster. I'm using it and I'm quite happy with it. Also, I'm using Reaper with VSD specifically because Reaper takes advantage of a double precision floating point bus. I'm not sure Mac has M5. M5 is Jamie Heinemann's Effects Studio, if I'm not mistaken. I think Mac is up to M4, although honestly, a beefy enough M1 is already way beyond Music Studio needs. So yeah, we got this part started up, and let's see what else we need to make. Advanced major minors and erect major minors. So one thing I can do which speeds my process up this way is copy, paste, and paste. And then I can just do a double clicky thing going on. I will be modifying these, but this one I don't actually have to modify that much. And I'll show you why. Because it's going to be the same thing, and we already know that we already know which chords we want. If it's major minors, we're going to simply take what's already there and stretch it out a bit. Oh, look at it trying to type extra things in without me asking. I would tend to prefer that it not fling stuff in my path, but what are you going to do? These crazy things. So there's our major minor setup. And the next thing I need to do is recede major minors. This should help a lot as far as like being in a key, having kind of a sense of what mode you want to be in, starting from there, and then going, what if I throw a weird chord in, and it telling you what chords are available or what would work. I think I actually like looking at you guys in light mode. I read a lot of stuff in light mode. I'm comfortable with it. Everything is always getting made into dark mode, up to and including Writer, this thing that I'm using that is trying to do stuff for me without me asking. So one thing I'm going to do here is move this up where I can see it easier. And then I'm pretty sure I'm drawing from Lydian. So in C, let's just double check. This should still run, right? So I can start in the chord in the key of C, and then if I drop back, it'll be receding, and it'll show me the first thing in that category. Recede B flat. So the secondary key is F. I'm pretty sure, yep, F. And then the column you go to, this is where it gets the B flat. It's showing this particular entry when I do this. And it's working perfectly fine, except for that I'm swapping out the majors and minors as needed to have it be accurate. So that B flat seems legit. So sure enough, 0, 1, 2, 3. 3 is the Lydian column. That's the one I copy. So basically I'll be taking that column down this middle here and copying it over to this, which is receding major minors. Those are the only ones that I have to actually swap out. So we start at F, and that's not what it's gonna go for, but all the same. And then it's not letting me double click around a, well actually we can fix that much more easily by simply swooping through and removing all of those hashtags because I can't double click on it. Grens, Reaper's a lot like me as a company. Reaper will let you use Reaper pretty damn well indefinitely. And all it will do is prompt you and keep asking you, are you still auditioning it? Are you still in trial mode? And you say yes. I'm not aware of Reaper getting up people's butts as far as the licensing kind of thing is concerned. And I'm certainly paying $60. I'm not sure what it takes for you to have to do a really expensive Reaper license, but I'm pretty sure I don't qualify. So go with, if you can, go with the normal person license and pay them. If you can't pay them, use it anyway because they are set up to let you use it anyway, and you will be grateful and end up paying them when you can. I really think that's where they're at. And I think it might have something to do with the fact that the Reaper developer, I think he's one of those guys that got wealthy in tech and then just did Reaper out of a labor of love. I just know that their whole scenario is very lenient as far as like holding people hostage for money and stuff. So that's why I say that Reaper are a lot like me as a developer. I've got a copy of Reaper on the virtual Windows machine, and I've not registered that, and I've never seen it fail on me. It's been a long time, and it doesn't seem to be kicking up a fuss. Oh, hang on. Hello?
Hey, how's it going? Steve here, Riverside.
Hey there. How's it going over there?
Good. So got the car in, scanned for codes. Got some VVT actuators replaced in it
Uh-huh.
on the engine. So did that, cleared the codes, ran the car for a bit, and then returned, and things look like they're operating good now.
Well, I don't know what a VVT actuator is, but if you found some that needed fixing, I appreciate that greatly.
Yeah, it has to do with a variable valve train.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I think it'll be happier with that stuff working properly. All right, so shall I come out and pick it back up and pay you?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, I'll head over. It'll take me about a half an hour to walk it, but that's why I'm starting around about now. See.
We're here.
All right, see you in a bit.
Okay, see ya, thanks.
All right, bye-bye. Yay, car is done. Car should feel better now. I wasn't expecting him to find that. I was expecting it to be something else. So what I'm going to do is finish typing this stuff so that I remember where I'm at. Let's see, it was this column. So I had just gotten to where I was going to have to do G flats. So let's do that. Pfft. Thanks. There we go. Then the next one down is D flat. Then the next down is A flat. This is going to make it much more helpful. The next one down is E flat. And then B flat. Alrighty. And then if I just swap those in using the orderliness that I came up with it's two little diagrams. One of them is just some of these get to be minor when you're receding. And then with advanced, it follows this pattern. And oh, what was wrong with it? It was throwing codes, and that was worrying me. I didn't like the fact that it was going check engine, because it's an old car, and I'm not going to be able to replace it anytime soon. So yeah, when it starts having objections, and it's had a bunch of things, like recently, here, I will finish up with this also. Like recently, the things I've had to deal with car-related were its front bearings were broken and getting worse, and I had to replace those, and that was like used car level expensive fixing those. But in so doing, it was also possible to fix like a broken sway bar linkage and also brakes. So fixing brakes, always good. And then more recently, the muffler rusted out, and I had to have that fixed in 2 stages because first the tailpipe fell off. I guess it was the tailpipe fell off, and so I had to have that another one put on. And then the muffler fell off the exhaust pipe, and so that was all a big pile of mess. And this is sort of the final detail, and I'm pretty sure the reason that it is giving me issues this time is because when the tailpipe rusted through and fell apart on the road over in Brattleboro, in fact, I asked, since it was giving me like weirdly better gas mileage without a muffler on it, I was like, can you expand the size of that pipe? Can you run a larger pipe back to a convenient place so that the pipe just has a larger diameter? And then it'll be a little more free-flowing, and maybe that will help me. It'll also make it sound slightly different because it'll be a little more rumbly and low frequency if the size of the pipe in there is bigger. And I did that, and it indeed acted like it was going to be giving me better gas mileage, but then it started throwing codes, and I was like, I probably did this to the poor car because I changed, it operates using a computer, and I changed the system out from under the computer. Yeah, the real pipe stuff that I had going on back in the day was when I had a Subaru Forester, and I had a whole separate exhaust pipe with larger pipes in it on the Forester, and the Forester had a very different catalytic converter and was just capable of going considerably louder. And I'm still enough of a child that I enjoy that sort of thing sometimes, although this current one doesn't really go to that extent. But yeah, no, I do code in even the car. I made the car throw up codes by changing the system out from underneath it. But yeah, on that light, I am going to go, and this is actually giving me a head start on dinner and stuff, and so I think it's just as well. I will fit in this stuff with the chord sequences, and I feel that is a perfectly fine amount of stuff to get done today. Maybe on Thursday we'll even derp around in Minecraft or something. I'm heading towards the taking a couple of weeks and just resting. But this is a decent thing to have discovered and been able to do today. And I have every intention of dropping the new version of K Cathedral. I said I was going to show that to you, and then I never got around to it. But I need to hit the road and head back again, about a half an hour walk to the garage. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying Tape Hack. Tape Hack is not this guy's hardware and software form, not even slightly. But I'll tell you what, it was still good. And I'm going to be getting use out of it myself. And on that note, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.